I'm hoping we're on. Well, it looks like we're recording on our YouTube channel. Welcome to all of you who are listening to this and to many of you who will be viewing the YouTube after the live presentation. Professor Koshin, could you give me a thumbs up if we're on live?
Yeah, greetings to everybody. Our moderator is David Barron. Welcome all. Please, Dave, floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Welcome to all of you who are joining us live. I see Professor Sartorius, one of the most renowned psychiatrists of our generation. I want to thank him personally for joining us and certainly for Professor Kostium. Um, all of you who have either stayed up very late if you're on the East Coast of the US or in the middle of the afternoon. But I'm hoping that today's session will be inspiring for the students, which is what SEED has really been dedicated to do about a particular project that we've been working on for a little over a year now. I have the great pleasure of bringing the coordinator, who is currently in Israel, and I'll let her just say a brief word about herself. And one of our graduate students, who actually happens to be my nephew and teaches at a community college with my brother, who's a PhD psychologist back in the Philadelphia area. What we're going to be talking about today is a project that was the result of what most good research comes from, and that's observation and listening. We get creative ideas. Usually, they're the ideas that are generated by our colleagues, our own personal observations. But most importantly, I think the skill that every researcher really needs to have is how to be a good listener and how to work with the team. Professor Sartorius has shared with us over the years how his colleagues and co-research became his friends. And that's what made the research special. And I think that's what makes it better research when the team gets together. So I'm thrilled to have two very key members of this team on an ongoing project. Fortunately, it's a project that we've gotten some of our preliminary data was just accepted for presentation in Mexico City at the WPA Congress coming up in mid-November. But we're not going to be focusing as much on the content of the research, but more about the process. What does it mean for a student to get involved? We've heard a lot about this, but I wanted to bring in the perspective of a person who has done just a phenomenal job coordinating this at a global level, and someone who is himself now a graduate student who's juggling being a graduate student in a PhD program, but also teaching himself and engaging in the research. So I'm going to let them share their stories. But the project basically was the result of, as many of you know, I've been involved with sport at a global level for very many years. I had the great fortune of starting the section on sport for WPA over 20 years ago now. And one of the things that I've observed and heard from colleagues all over the world, quite sadly, was the increasing burnout amongst youth athletes. Now, Hilla, as we're going to hear, works with actually a very elite group of athletes in Israel. But as a result of this, I developed a little over a year ago now a burnout screener, not a diagnostic tool, very important, but a screener to identify emerging burnout in youth athletes. And as it turns out, this is not a new problem. It's the result of a lot of things going on, almost the professionalization of youth sport, the driving of youth athletes to only play one sport, having work styles that just push them maybe beyond the point of enjoying. And in fact, there's a paper that Steve's, my brother, whose son is going to lecture to us, we just got accepted. It's going to be published in a sports psych journal, is have we taken the fun out of youth sport? And I think that's something that we really need to address. So what this project was is I developed a screener, I beta tested it, and I had the great fortune of being introduced to Hilla, who, and I'll let her introduce herself, but has a long history of not only as an athlete, but working in elite sports, She's got a very interesting and unique role with the Wingate Academy in Israel. And Hilla also has exceptionally good organizational skills. She's been a joy to work with. She's helped us get this translated not only into Hebrew, but in a number of other languages, and has been collecting data for almost a year now. So I want to have Hilla give an overview of kind of her involvement in the project, the importance. So I think the students need to understand that research is very much a team game. It's not like the individual sports that some of our friends and athletes participate in, but it's a team game, and the success of the team is really only as good as the team members. So, Hilla, without further ado, I'd like you to briefly introduce yourself, what you do, and then talk about the project, some of the challenges, some of the opportunities that our student and junior colleagues who largely make up this audience are on the call. Please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Dr. Baran. Thank you, Dr. Kushkan. I'm happy to be here. My background is actually in strength and conditioning and athletic therapy. And I got introduced to Dr. Baran here via an athlete who I coach towards the Olympics, who is also a doctor doing her residency now in psychiatry. So it's the connection here is very interesting, and that tied up to what you said, Dr. Baron, about good relationships and having fun working in a team or with the team you work with. So I've been fortunate to work on this project for about a year now. The main, as a coordinator, I don't know much about, well, I learned a lot about psychiatry and psychology in the past year or so, but my main role here is being a coordinator, bringing it in to the right personnel right here at the academy I work with. I think the challenges we've been working on it for quite a while before we actually released it for the athletes, and just understanding what was behind it and what is the background took us some time to see if it actually fits here in the academy. And one of the main things that got us accepting this simple yet powerful screener and implement that into our system was good timing. Also, I think that was very, very important just to have it on the right time, because we made some changes back a year ago within our system. I think, well, there are many opportunities for students around here because I think part of being a student is having your brain so pliable and open to new ideas, what hopefully you will be able to maintain later, but you sort of get set into your own ways as you get progressed with your career. So being a student really keeps you open-minded, and you sort of have no choice but to search for new ideas and search for new avenues. So that's actually a good thing. I was a student back then doing my master's degree, so I was keen to jump on this project. I think some of our challenges were around this project were quite a few, although it's been a fairly smooth sailing with this, but translation was one of them, just translating the right words, the essence of the words, not literally what the word meant. And that it took us quite a while to work around that. That was an interesting process because also the focus of this screener is youth athletes, and we really wanted the language to speak to them so that they are able to answer it as honestly as possible, and so that they really understand what they're answering. So we really want to get the language right. That I think that was the main thing that took us some time to get right. And recruiting other members of the support team we work with, that is quite challenging. We're still working on it. So I work with a sport academy, and every sport team has their own psychologist. So recruiting them to get to pass down the screener to the athletes, that's work in progress. Some of them jumped on it. Some of them were a little bit more skeptical, as they should, right? Dr. Baron met some of them. We ran a couple of Zoom sessions, but really recruiting the staff, everyone around this product, that was mainly my job, really to bring it down to the athletes, the coaches, really everyone who touch or has anything to do with the athlete. I feel like I suppose, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I wonder if you could share with the students what was successful in recruiting others who maybe were skeptical. Because I think any good researcher, if we're doing clinical research, we've got to recruit subjects. We've got to get people. But we've been very lucky that we've got about 6 other countries now who have kind of signed on. So we're getting it translated into getting more data. But I wonder if you could share with the students how you went about going to people who either didn't know about it or maybe were skeptical, because I think that's core to all clinical research, is getting into, making sure that you have access to the subjects that you want to see, and making sure that people understand it so that they will be certainly, if not part of the solution, at least allow you to do your work.
Yes, thank you. I think a big part of it, it's actually not the professional side, it's the organizational side. So the people who manage, the psychologists, the head of the system, the athletes in that case, let's say the coaches, because they have sort of a say with any group of athletes. I think they are key. If their management skills and organization skills are top, it works well. If it's shaky, it works a little less. That it really comes down to a lot of organizational skills. And to recruit the staff we work with, we ran lots and lots of sessions actually before we started implementing the screeners, because we wanted to get feedback, first of all, and see where we hit resistance too. So what are the objections? Or is it data collection? Is it anything sensitive around the screener? Is it the actual logistics of having the athletes filling in the screener? And that we solved fairly quickly, because we had it all online on an app. Every athlete has a phone, a smartphone, access to the app. But we really ran many meetings, explained that in different variations, so that we could speak sort of to everyone in our team, including a meeting with, I think, 1 or 2, even more than one, meeting with Dr. Baron, because you actually bring a different perspective than what they are used to hear in our the academy and the Wingate Institute in general. So that was good to hear a different perspective, a different person speaking, not just only us.
Yeah,
that worked well.
Well, I think what Hilla was so extraordinary in doing is, as you're probably hearing a little bit, is attention. Devil is in the detail. having a good idea is a first start. But what makes for a successful project is what she has brought to this group is really attending to all the details, which is one thing that's critically important, and she's done it exceptionally well. Identifying the key stakeholders, as we say in the States, the people, not just the study subjects, but the people who would be in a position to either help to succeed or maybe to be in a position to have it not succeed. So it's identifying those people, willing to go out to them. She's demonstrated to them what's in it for them. It's not just about us getting data, to validate. You can't really validate it because there is no diagnosis of burnout, but to get them engaged to see why they should want to do this. And I think the one thing that I want all of you to take away from this, and hopefully you'll hear from Michael in just a few minutes, is have a passion for what you're doing. And this is what Hilla has done such an exceptionally good job at. We've been on many calls, almost weekly Zooms for the better part of a year now. Her passion for the project, and that passion becomes infectious. That when she's excited about it, I know she's brought in people, coaches, who I can almost bet were not so enthusiastic about it, but her personal passion about why this was important, what this meant for the athlete, for the organization, was really something that no matter what your project is, as you move forward in your careers, is maintain. Don't do something you don't have some interest in, because it's tough to fake passion. And what Hilla has done is shown consistently, and her passion has only grown. She shares some of the original data we had. She's developed these beautiful dashboards and spreadsheets, and she presents them with the sense of passion. And I know, as someone who's been in this field for well over 40 years now, this is what brings people in. They want to hear more about it. So when you get into your projects, understand that you're part of the team, understand your role. Hilla has just done an absolutely phenomenal job. The issue of language, we spent a lot of time. That language isn't just the individual words, but as she says, were we capturing the essence of what we meant? And we are dealing with this now in about 5 other languages that I'm working with local colleagues, with the kids. Michael's worked on it in Spanish in Philadelphia. There's a large Spanish-speaking population. So what Hilla has done, and what I encourage all of you when you go forward in your clinical research, you have a chance to be on the team, is make sure you get yourself a Hilla, someone who's got a passion for it, who understands it, who's dedicated to doing the job right, but always in a respectful way, respectful of the kids, of our student, the athletes that we're working with, respectful of the coaches, respectful of the administrators, and being respectful of the process. So she has just done an absolutely phenomenal job. We're going to get back to her for some more discussion, but I wanted to switch gears a little bit now to Michael Barron. As I said, by way of full disclosure, Michael's my godson and my nephew. He teaches psychology with his dad, been doing that for 6 years. He's currently a PhD, a graduate student here in the Philadelphia area. And what I had asked, and I call him Mikey because I've known him since the day he was born. He's been Mikey to me. So we'll keep that theme for this today, because we're all friends and colleagues on this call. But I wanted Mikey to talk about what it meant for him in that role of being a student engaged in research. So I think he can relate in a way that certainly I'm probably older than most of your parents, maybe even some of your grandparents. So Mikey, if you could share your thoughts about getting involved with this, what it meant, from that student's perspective of being a member of the research team, please.
Absolutely. So first off, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever we're joining from the world. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, to get to speak with my uncle, with all of you. Thank you for having me. But as far as kind of my role with being involved as a grad student in the research, it's been eye-opening. It's been challenging. It's been enjoyable, though. So it certainly speaks to his point about like what you do, because that's going to help power you through those maybe more stressful times. But what's really been especially fun for me is, to be able to take the classroom and put it into practice in the real world. You learn research methods, you learn research design, you learn statistics, you learn all of those wonderful things in school. but until you can actually apply it to a real world problem, until you can apply it to something you really care about, those problem data sets we go over in class are one thing. But when it's a project you help design, when it's a project you help develop, it adds a little bit of extra oomph to it, or at least a little extra value. Um, Certainly, then also juggling coursework and understanding, you don't necessarily maybe have as much time as you would like to be able to devote, but that doesn't minimize your role. Understanding, yes, having a little less of that generational gap between myself and the subjects that we're looking at maybe allows me to be able to offer some perspectives or some nuances that maybe other members of the team hadn't considered or hadn't really been able to think about. So certainly you don't want to go in with a little bit of headstronginess, but at the same time recognize, even though you're a grad student, you still have something to offer, right? You still have something of value to contribute, especially because, I've done research in biology laboratories, I've done research in neuroscience laboratories. When you're doing things in kind of the social sciences, especially in a clinical realm, or at least the sports psychiatry realm, there's a lot more nuance to it. It isn't so cut and dry where, okay, we're going to look at the hippocampus, break out your atlas off of Bregman Lambda, here's where we do the surgery, right? How you ask, when you ask, what you do to phrase it are all very important factors. So consider your role as a grad student is to be able to maybe offer some of that perspective of being more engaged in the material. It's been a little bit since my uncle's been engaged in the coursework while I'm experiencing it as we speak, right? And so having that kind of fresh perspective, that kind of more updated, you could say, training is a perspective that's incredibly valuable. So don't undermine your role and your contribution, but at the same time, still respect your role, right? It's a give and take in this world, right? Your PI is going to give you a lot of experience and a lot of support. You then also have something that you can offer. So it isn't just solely receiving benefit. You also are able to provide it of yourself when you're involved in research, especially at the graduate level, where you can take on a bit more of a role than you might in an undergrad or non-graduate school setting.
Well, that's great. And I think one of the points I wanted to underscore that Mikey mentioned was the world has changed. Professor Kostin and Sartorius, when we started doing our research, social media was not a big deal. Social media was going down to the local pub and maybe having a cold beverage. But I think and Hill is a little bit more so but that perspective of particularly a study like this, some of that generational gap. I mean, I will often call Mikey if I have trouble kind of opening up a Zoom call. I mean, that's the extent of my expertise. But yet, that's really important as we go through with social science research going forward. The role of social media. We're talking a lot about what AI is going to mean, and that's a whole nother discussion. But when we're doing global studies, which this is, and hopefully some of you will have the joy of engaging in studies and research that does take on that global perspective. Hopefully you all get involved with WPA, which is really, it's the global psychiatric organization. But giving that student perspective, this is why we started SEED. In fact, it was Professor Kostin's idea, who has been so dedicated to students and respecting students and having students be engaged, that it was his brainchild when I was the chair of the section that we got this thing started. And he really personally has kept this going, and we all owe him a great debt of thanks. But understanding the role that you can play and what you can bring to the table, as we say in the States, in understanding some of the things that I might take for granted, that particularly when we're dealing with youth athletes, too big a generational gap. So the members of the team, we all know a good football team is not made of just 11 goalkeepers or 11 strikers. So the team is made up of the blending together from the different kind of roles and positions. And I think having research, having that perspective of someone who is closer to it and maybe still excited and learning about it really makes for, I think, for a better product, and gives us the opportunity as the more senior graybeards of the group to get the joy and satisfaction of mentoring and training the next generation of leaders. And in my case, I get to only work with superstars, so I'm really lucky. So I want to be very respectful of time, but before we move on, and I do want to have a little bit more dialogue in this. I'd like to, because we do have Professor Sartorius and Professor Kostyan, who have been, for those of you who don't know, Norman Sartorius has been a hero of mine for a very long time ago. When he was involved with global, he's the one that really got me interested in global mental health many years ago. Like I said, I've been over 40 years in this field. His leadership, not only in global psychiatry and global mental health, but in being a mentor to so many distinguished researchers over the years. He's been really one of the shining stars of our field when there weren't many people looking at psychiatry. So he also has really kept a perspective. The one thing I've always been so envious of him is that I don't know how many languages he speaks fluently, but I know it's a lot. So when I struggle to find someone who speaks the languages, I've literally been in meetings and Professor Sartorius will be speaking to one person in one language, turn his head, instantly change language, turn it 5 or 6 times. I'm thinking he's got to be faking this. He's just an extraordinary human being, as I've already mentioned, what Professor Kostyan has done for SEED. But Professor Sartorius, could you share with us, because again, I think you have really been one of the real true global leaders in psychiatric research and in so many different areas. So we'd be honored to share some thoughts with our young colleagues. The famous words, you're muted. Professor, I think you're still muted. I don't think we have any volume, unless it's just me.
No, it is not.
That's better. There we go.
Right.
Welcome, my friend.
I was saying how, that you made my day by saying all these very nice things about me. They may not be true, but they certainly made my day. So
well, they're all true.
But I'll tell you, of all the results of research and other things that we've done in many studies, the most pleasant and the most rewarding experience for me was in fact, just a small postcard that I got recently. And it was a postcard from a holiday spot in which several people signed. And who the people were? These were the grandchildren of the investigators whom we have involved in a study 50 years ago. And to me, that was the result of the study. It was not that we published something because people have already forgotten what we've published. Some of the results remain and they are valuable. Others get to the very mass of results. But what we have created by the first studies was really a relationship between people who were doing the project. They started liking each other, they worked together, and they will do other things together. Maybe they will produce wonderful results. Maybe they will not, but they will certainly have a network of people who like each other and who feel almost as if they become a family. And I think that that's also for a young person who is joining a project, unless you can feel that you are entering into a friendly family, don't do the project, because it's a misery to be with people whom you don't like. You have to work with them and you hate them and they hate you, and it's not getting you anywhere. So go for projects or groups of people with whom you can work, whom you feel good about, because that eventually will also help in whatever you might be doing. So that's one point about that I think was important. The lesson that we have learned in all of the collaborative research was to seek human relations and secondly, then look for excellence of results. Some of our studies failed. There was not enough money, or there were people left, or whichever. But what stayed in the participants is that they became friends. They liked each other. Not all of them, but a large proportion of them. And I think that was a great thing. Now, the consequence of this is, of course, if somebody invites you to participate in a project, don't look what's in the project, look who is doing it. And go to see these people and try to see whether you can live with these people and share bad and good with them. And I think that's something that is of tremendous importance. Now, a second point, maybe to make apart from this emphasis on the human relations in research, which is done together, is the results of a program um, are very often very far in the future. And for a young person, it's very important to see whether this project is likely to produce results which can be used sooner than 20 years from now, because they will need these results and they will need to do so. It should be the selection of a project in which a young person will participate is a very complicated process. It's not like you have the experience, you take what you think is right, or for other reason. But for a young person, entering into a project is opening a door to the world. And that door must be opening to a very broad world. So you have to think very carefully who will be the people with whom you are going to share and work together over the next several years. Now, I'm very interested in Mr. or Dr. Dilavar, or is it a doctor? We don't see his or her face, and she must be sleepy or something. Dr. Choshkun, do you have the power to uncover the person who is behind this black screen?
I have got in touch with her. She is having a problem with her mobile phone. That's why she can't open the video.
Nobody will surpass Dr. Choshkun in finding good words about everybody. I'm sure that her telephone works like a dream. But on the other hand, I'm happy that he found another way to praise people who work with him and to be with them.
Thank you. Well,
well, maybe one other thing to say about research. The goal of research in which you participate changes over your career. In the beginning, you should look at what will the research give me to get forward in my career. Maybe it's a very boring research, but if it's done with very good people who are very influential, go with them. You may learn something about techniques, but you may also grow in your technique. The luxury of selecting what you like to do comes when you are very much more advanced, when you can in fact think and find the money for it and find the people, and your authority will attract other people to collaborate with you. So in the beginning of your research participation, it's opening the door for your career. At the very end, you will enrich perhaps the world with wonderful results. So it's the motivation to do research should change very much in the course of one's development. So one other thing I wanted to say was there's an old saying in our language which says that you cannot have a door opened unless you knock on it. And I think that that is true also for research. You should at no time be ashamed or afraid to offer to participate in the things that you like doing. You should just go there. The worst thing that can happen to you is they say, go ahead, go away. So what? So you have not lost very much. But if you see a project that corresponds to what you want to do, that gives you a chance to become a member of a powerful team, or in other ways, it enables you to get to know other people, or enables you to learn something, go and ask. I would say that I have found among the senior people practically no one who says no to a young person wanting to work. It is the barrier is very often in the young person. Oh, I'm too young, or I don't speak the language, or I haven't done this, or the barrier is not on the top. The barrier is very often at the bottom. So, as I say, try. The worst that can you go to Sila and say, what are you doing? In fact, can I participate in this? It may be boring as hell. So in that case, you will say, hello, this was wonderful. I can't do anymore. But maybe you will find it sufficiently interesting to go and do it. And then you will not go to only to know her, which is very nice, I presume, but also you will get to know people whom she knows, and your network of people whom you know, whom you can address if you need some advice, or who can call on you if they need or would like to involve you, will be enlarged.
Yeah, the
So
networking
thank you so much.
is just so important, and I just want to underscore what the Professor Sartorius said is research. I believe should be at least fun in some degree, even if you're not completely engaged in the topic. But the fun, and I feel so blessed that just about every research project I've done, if I didn't like the project, I liked the people, and like you said, this is one of the real strengths of WPA is the networking opportunity. So for those of you, just getting started, I couldn't say it any more eloquently than Professor Sartorius just said. It's a great place to be and get the right mentors. We've talked about mentorship, and you're not there to just collect the coffee, but as Michael said, you've got something very valuable to contribute. Professor Kostin, who was really responsible for this going on for, I guess this is our 34th. I wonder if you could share some of your thoughts, particularly because you've had such a distinguished career as an educator.
Well, thank you very much. The way you have brought it to be a member of the team, and Dr. Sartorius's inputs really made it very understandable for all, including me. When we have young people among us, and I hope, there will be others who will be watching this on YouTube. And by the way, Maham is with us. Thank you,
Yes,
Maham.
delightful. Yes, I was already applauding.
Yeah, thank you for solving your problem with your camera. Well, maybe
Fortunately.
if we will have some time at the end of this today's session, we can bring the topic to how we can motivate our colleagues in this seed group. We unfortunately have real problem. Look, now we have only 3 members from seed together with us, and they're all graduates. We still have problem with bringing in new medical students. Maybe I keep saying we should make some shorts, some small videos, either TikTok or whatever it is. For example, what Dr. Sartorius has said a few minutes ago, and what Dr. De Baron has said. Our young colleagues should listen to the importance of being a member of a team. That's all I would like to say for this.
I think that's very important. I know we do have just a small number, but I wonder if any of the people on the call have questions or comments for either Michael or Hilla about kind of the process of this study, maybe share some of your thoughts, but questions for them about being involved in an ongoing study that is kind of exploding in a very positive way. And like I say, we started with one country, and now we're up to about 6, and I'm getting more calls to expand it to other countries, which is just great. So does anyone, again, we have a small live group. I know many more will be viewing this asynchronously in LA. Here it's 20 to midnight. For Mikey, it's 2:40 in the morning in the East Coast. So some of these time issues create challenges, but I wonder questions or comments of them in their role in this project.
Actually, I can start to talk. Just thanks
Please.
so much for presentation. It's like uh, when we have a meeting with David Byrne, just like his enthusiasm immediately affects me. Just like every time, it's also made my day. And like seeing you, Hila and Michael, just like I can see the passion from your eyes that you are doing the job that you really love and care about it. And I think it's really like one of the main points that you need to have passion, because I remember like in my first year at my medical school, I like get involved in lab just like about genes related to breast cancer, and I only like try to do something to get some skills, and I only remember that I like want to get off from that place as soon as possible, because I really like, I don't have passion what I was doing at that time. But then just like I get interested in psychiatry and I did some projects related to that, like effects of telemedicine in smoking cessation. And I remember like every time I am passionate to get like to do Zoom meetings and like to brainstorming about it. And that's really keep me active and effective in that team. But when I was like do lab work related to gene, like I felt myself inadequate. I mean, because I didn't have passion, and it's really good to see that in your team. Actually, like right now, my main problem is to find a project that actually I did find a lot of projects that interest me, but the main problem for me is like to get connect with them. Like actually every day I like send like I'm newly graduate and I'm trying to find a position like a postdoc, and there are actually a bunch of studies or projects that I want to get involved, but like only sending mails from apart is just like um I guess so. I mean, few replies, and like most of the time, like it didn't show up. I mean, I didn't get answer, or even if I get answer, like it's hard to get involved. I mean, Hilla actually talked about like how she connects. I mean, to that project. Um, but maybe I can get some advices, like because right now actually I stuck at the point that should I like continue to send emails? I mean, keep going on, just like search for my passion or like try to find the projects that I have passion, or should I like maybe try to like open up my like list or like try to maybe get involved in other projects that maybe I could like, but I don't know for sure.
Well, just one thing that I wanted to ask Dr. Choskun. I mean, you are a good example of somebody who speaks fluent English and who finds English no difficulty. But I would not be surprised if some other colleagues in Turkey would be feeling much more comfortable if they could have this discussion in Turkish or in the language which they normally speak. I remember my own feeling when I first went to speak to a group that spoke a different language. I was extremely shy and felt I'm likely to make a mistake whenever I open my mouth, so I shut up. And I think that this is to overcome this shyness is fine. But I think the participation could very well be built in the language which everybody is comfortable about. Then you can invite Dr. Baron to speak in English once and then comment what he has said in Turkish. But I think that we forget sometimes that for many of younger colleagues whom I have met, speaking in a foreign language with senior professors is they feel uneasy about this. They're too shy. Now, maybe this is an idea, Dr. Joshkun, that you might wish to consider to have a group meet in Turkish, and then occasionally to that group in Turkish, you invite a foreign body like Dr. Baron or Michael Baron or Hila, whoever, to come. And then, since they are in a majority who speaks the language, which they speak very well, they will feel much better about it. And they will ask questions which they otherwise would not ask. And I think that that is something that you might wish to consider. The language barrier is not only a knowledge barrier, it's also an emotional barrier. You feel, did I use the right word? Because words can be harming and insulting unless you select the right one. And you are being decent people, you don't want to insult anybody. So how do you approach a big professor? I mean, you shut up, no, and wait for him to speak to you. This is how you approach him. You don't approach him. Uh, so that I think that that's something that you should maybe consider.
Thank you very much. Again, a very important input. Thanks a lot, Dr. Sartorius. Maybe this could apply for other colleagues. For example, Kashmir works in Pakistan, and they have recently finished a project. Maybe, and Maham, although from the same country, she is in the United States. Unfortunately, we don't have other friends from other countries among us. But again, let me say, I hope they will be watching this on YouTube.
I wonder if Hilla and Michael address that language issue, because I think this really is important. This is why we wanted to make sure that the tool was translated, not just the words, but Hilla, you talked about it in the beginning about the importance of having it communicate to people in a way that they feel comfortable, which I think was Professor Sartorius's point, is just feeling more comfortable, certainly when they're filling out a symptom screen. I wonder if you could, I know you've both worked on this, maybe you could share some comments with the group.
Yes, absolutely. I'm gonna start actually going back to Farad. Sorry if I mispronounced that, because you asked the question before that language comment. And about passion, I just want to say something. I didn't mean to become a global coordinator or anything of that. I just saw a wonderful idea and pushed for it. And it slowly rolled, and it has been rolling and becoming bigger and bigger. Really, I didn't mean for any of it to happen, right? It's just our passion, the conversation with Dr. Barron, the whole Barron family. Actually, I got to meet them all. Um, um, so really find something that you like. Keep your mind open, because you never know from what direction it will come to you. Actually, once you're searching for something, and really don't give up. Keep sending those emails, but be very clear on what you can offer. Because I'm no psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but I know for this project I can offer coordination, I can offer organization, I can offer problem solving skills, right? Like it's not like just the professional side of things. That's going back to our conversation before. Now, English is not my first language either. So I can absolutely relate to this conversation. And it's always easy to speak your own language, and because you can bring ideas better, like you can feel that you can express yourself better. But I've learned working with many people around the world in different countries, different time zones, right? That people are in general very kind and very patient to what you have to say, whether you say it correctly or not. And I've been encouraged over time to voice my ideas, regardless of whether it sounds correctly or not. That's and I was silent for the first, I don't know, however many years, when I just started um, really in classes. Really, I was silent at the beginning. Absolutely, I can relate to that. But don't, even if you're uncomfortable, because that's going to happen. The world is global. You need to have conversation in your own language. You need to be able to express yourself. Absolutely, but it's easy to say don't be shy, right? It's not easier said than done. But really, in my experience, people are generally very kind, appreciative, patient to what you have to say um, on whatever topic is discussed. Because in the end, you don't want to stay in your own box, right? You want to explore, you want to go bigger most of the time, maybe. You want to go global, and definitely you want to invest in learning sometimes better English, better French, better whatever language it is. I struggle with French, I admit. I lived in Montreal for many years. I won't be able to have this conversation in French. But at some point, after a few that I will sit silently, I probably will say something. So the world is global. So it's a give and take.
Yeah. And if somebody isn't patient and understanding, maybe you need to find another research partner.
There you
Michael, I
go.
wonder if you could share. I know you've been working on getting this into Spanish in with the population within the US who only speak Spanish. Maybe you could share what some of the challenges was, what you've had to do to get a kind of a Spanish version that's appropriate for southeastern Pennsylvania.
Absolutely. But also then before, if I could also offer a little bit of comments to
Please.
that question there. Um, a big thing I always tell my students is consider whenever you reach out to anybody, this is the subject they've devoted their life to. This is their passion. So speak and email labs, researchers, PIs, professors, whoever it might be, with that understanding. Not saying you haven't, but if I may, it's that idea of I've read your recent articles. I found these studies you did were just fascinating. This dynamic here is what I'm interested in. What other projects are you doing that are similar? Kind of fine tuning, tailoring that email, but then also understanding enough about the lab, recognizing I understand you have coordinator so and so. I'm going to email them too. I'm going to email the lead of the lab. I'm going to email the other grad students doing their own research, kind of figure blast everybody of importance in that lab. One of them will reply or one of them will see it. Maybe they'll talk amongst themselves. And suddenly now your name is more than just this generic email I got. It is. This person's been persistent and they've been specific. They've cited recent publications. They've noted, I see you recently did a presentation here. I watched the video. I found it enthralling. So, the more you can kind of fine tune and tailor that email to labs, maybe it helps. It's also just from my experience, I found you usually get about a 10% success rate. So for every lab you email, maybe one will get back for every 10. And then for every 10 who get back to you, maybe one will have a position. But, it's an unfortunate reality as a grad student or recent graduate. Congrats, by the way, where that's kind of the reality to it. Along the lines then with language, it's just been fascinating for me. So I minored in German in undergrad. I took Spanish in high school. And what I've very much found is fascinating is not only am I recalling some of my Spanish when I work with this population, but very much to Hilla's point, oftentimes I find these people just just thrilled that I even can speak a little bit of the Spanish language. What then often ends up happening is we usually have a sort of laugh about, well, my Spanish might be a little better than their English, and then we start speaking in each other's languages, which are each of our second languages. But what's really been kind of unique and fun is not only have we been trying to translate this to a specific dialect of Spanish that is used in this part of the world that is based off of another part of the world. But we've been doing it very much at kind of the ground level. So we're talking with kids, we're talking with parents, we're talking with school administrators, getting kind of that global perspective in a way to say, does the child understand what we're saying? Does the parent understand what we're saying? Are they both interpreting what we're saying the correct way? It's just like I said before, especially in psychiatry, how you ask, when you ask, what you say, all greatly impacts then the results you're going to get. And if you're asking a question that the child is interpreting very differently, right? Are you then able to say, well, we have valid results across because everyone understood this is exactly what we meant? And it's been really interesting just kind of seeing kind of the dialect and the differences across, because our population come from all over Central America and they don't all use the same words. They do have different cultural understandings. So we might try to put it in Spanish, but Mexican Spanish is very different from Honduran Spanish, which is very different from Guatemalan. And so it's been a fun challenge to kind of see the differences, but then also the similarities. And certainly kind of once we start collecting the data, that'll kind of add complexity to it. But it's been really neat kind of being a part of that translation because that just goes to endear yourself to others. When the families see me, my dad, my brother, through the business that we run and this study, talking with them personally, getting to really know them before we even start collecting data, you get a lot different results and responses. And it really just kind of adds to the quality of the research when you can say, I'm the person who will walk you through this. I'm the person who is then with your athletes or with your children. And having that language connection there only heightens and strengthens that bond.
One more point about the language. We have here three groups of people, which are very different. First is some of us here have as a mother tongue English. That's wonderful. the world today, the scientific world, uses English as its main language. Then there is a second group, which is, for example, Pakistan, which has a culture, poetry, and everything else you want, and millions of people, 150 million or something, who speak Urdu much better than you will ever be understand. They speak their own language, and if they have to move into English, it's only because the British Empire in its time has been the right way to the world, and many people have then tried to get English as a second language. But then, but they for years they have been in the part of the Commonwealth, so English was not a foreign language. It was one of the languages which many people spoke, and usually a person who was educated spoke at least the local language, the Urdu or whichever, and English. But then we get to the third group. The Turkish Empire didn't need any foreign languages. It was speaking to people in Turkish, and people better listen than anything else. So it's a very different proposition. You speak your mother tongue, but the what do you call it? For a Turkish, that I at least feel, if I were a Turk, I would think, well, the whole world should speak Turkish. Then we are going to do business. That is not possible. So one has to think a little bit that the ease of entering into another language is different for people from different backgrounds. And that is something that might be particularly important in the instance of Turkey. Less so in the instance of the Commonwealth countries, which have had in school and elsewhere normal education. They read English, they write English, and they are having some of the most beautiful writers in the English language coming from their countries. So I think that that's another point about the language that we should keep in mind.
Yeah, and I think to that point that we should never assume. I think, unfortunately, when you're in the United States, you assume that the rest of the world speaks English and that they understand it, which is I think, very unfortunate, but it's the reality. So I think not only showing respect, but not assuming that everyone understands what you're saying, or that if you use certain forms of language that might make sense to your friends, but aren't part of Queen's English, so to speak, or someone who has a Philadelphia accent like I have. So I think showing respect to your study subjects, to your collaborators, to your friends, and not assuming that you understand, but asking them. And I've always found that it's not only the right thing to do, but I think it enhances the quality of the research, that people know that, no, they respect. That's why we've worked very hard on this project to show respect, that we want the kids and their parents and the coaches to really understand it in their native language. And we've asked for their feedback to, to make sure. So we are just about out of time. I do want to say a final word to Professor Koshin. I want to thank Hilla. I want to thank Michael, all of you who joined this. We did put our email addresses on there. If you're interested in getting involved in screening youth athletes for burnout, we're always looking. It's become a global project, and we'd love to get you involved as we could. I want to certainly thank Professor Sartorius for his sage words, as always. And final word to my dear friend and really the father of the seed group, Professor Koshin, and then we'll sign off because I know it's 3 a.m. for Michael.
Thank you so much. But before we close, could we have a few minutes for Maham and Kashmir? They may have some interesting things to say.
Of course.
Hi, everyone. I love attending these meetings because just the discourse, topics get brought up left and right. And it's always so interesting to hear everyone's input, notably, our more senior members like Dr. Sartorius, Dr. Koshkun, Dr. Barron himself. And I apologize for missing out on y'all's presentation. I think I hopped on the very tail end of Michael Barron speaking. So I'm going to have to go back and watch on YouTube later on whenever that gets posted. But I'm someone who currently works in research at MUSC Charleston. So it's also 3 a.m. for me. So I can empathize with Michael here. You look great though. I look kind of rough. Don't know how you managed to pull that. But the observation that I have had, especially with medical students and maybe myself in particular, also when I was a medical student a couple years ago, is finding my passion when it came to research. Because I'm an international medical graduate, I had gone to med school in Pakistan that unfortunately I don't think still has too strong of a research environment, especially at the medical school level. Would you happen to have any advice on some of our younger members, maybe on how to find your passion or how to find that like niche within research where you can kind of fit into and contribute to? This might be like a tangent topic, but if anyone has any advice for that.
Well, I'll jump in. I think one of the things is, what are you really interested in? So I'm interested in sports. I've been interested in youth sports. So I think early on, if you're interested in addiction, women's issues, whatever it might be, I think that the topics that you would likely, if you saw a newspaper article on it, you'd likely pick it up and read it. So something that you already have an interest in, if not a passion. So I think that that's fairly easy. I think finding someone can be a bit more challenging, and then you have to rely on your mentors and your teachers. Who's doing this? Look at the literature. Like Michael said, who's publishing in this area in your school? Who's giving a grand rounds on a topic that you're particularly interested in? I've gotten many calls over the years. I've done many, many grand rounds. I've been very lucky, and I'll always get a resident or student says, boy, I was really interested in this. What can we do? And we've started student projects. So I think you have to be a little creative, but now with the with the internet and with Google Scholar and with all the engines, if you just Google somebody's name or the topic and then find, because as Professor Sartorius said, it's fairly rare that you find someone who's engaged in research who isn't interested. Sometimes maybe they won't have an opening, but I know the greatest joy for most of us seniors is getting the privilege to mentor the up and coming stars, the people who are going to be leading the way in the future. So I would say find a topic that is of interest to you, that you want to learn more about, you want to participate in, and then use some of the advantages of social networking or Google Scholar, things like that. And then reach out to them and say, as Michael said, I read your paper, or I'm really interested in this. Are there any opportunities? And they might say, well, no, I know someone in your department who's really good. Let me give him or her a call. So I think that type of networking for our senior members. And any other comments to add to that?
Well, I would love, I would love to add to that. Just in terms of passion, go back to the why. Why did you go to that school, that program in particularly to begin with? Go back to the foundations of it. And then there was a reason for that. And now you're just, okay, I'm here, so I have to find something I'm passionate about. Go back to the basics, see what's there, and then move on.
My advice to you is write to whoever you think you'd like to work with. Just write to them. It doesn't cost much. You write a letter, you say, I'm doing this, that, and the other. I've yet to meet a senior researcher of good quality who would not be flattered by a letter from Pakistan saying, I have read your work and I find it wonderful and I would like to participate. They may not involve you, but they will certainly think good about you. So you cannot lose. All you can lose is the 10 minutes or 20 minutes or an hour that you need to draft a letter saying, I'm doing this, here is what I'm doing. Is there a possibility that I could join the work which you are doing, or in some other way? So do not be shy about that. The chances are that, and I'll tell you one other thing which may be funny. There are some people who are very busy, so you hesitate about writing to them because they're very busy people. But think a little bit, why are they busy? They are busy because they do not know how to say no. So if you write to them, they'll say yes to you as well and involve you in a way.
Such a good point. Well, and any of our other colleagues, I know we're just about out of time, and the hour is very bad for the East Coast, and it's beyond me. But any final comments before we close tonight's session? And again, such thanks to the members of my team who have taught me, and we're having a lot of fun. Hopefully they're having as much fun as I have, having this thing grow and move forward. And we're looking for new partners to join us to have this be the global project that I was hoping it would be, but wasn't so sure when we started. And sometimes you just get lucky. Anyone else? Well, thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Koch, for all you've done here. Again, I can say honestly, the thing that's been the most enjoyable for me in my career has been being engaged with my research teams, whether they were successful or not, but the friends I've made, and now the most enjoyable part is being able to mentor and learn and work with my junior colleagues, my senior colleagues, and there's a very unique bond that takes place when you're working on a project together that you all have a passion for. Thank you all so much. Have a good day, and we'll see you on the 10th of October, which I think is World Mental Health Day, is our next session. Thanks so much. Take care, everyone.